Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, assalamu alaikum, peace be upon all of you. So in having a foundational understanding of teenagers and how they are and how you're going to approach them for adults who are in their lives, teachers, parents, or anyone else, something that is important to understand about them is that they are inherently insecure and emotionally intense, meaning more insecure and emotionally intense compared to you or I as fully developed adults, but also more insecure and emotionally intense relative to children younger than them who are not in adolescence yet, and I'll explain why. Now, firstly, insecurity, just with what I talked about in previous videos about myelination and how there's constant development going on just in the way that their mind has thoughts and forms thoughts. Just that right there tells you that there's unpredictability and constant change for you and even more so for them in what their thoughts are going to be and how they have thoughts. So that inherently has some instability to it. Again, especially relative to children and adults, that is going to be insecure by its nature and make them feel insecure by their nature. So the myelination is one thing. Another thing about the mind is processing and neural activity in different regions of the brain and different parts of the brain. So there's a lot of information. A lot of this information comes from neuroimaging and brain scanning, which technology of that has really advanced in the last 30 years. A lot's been done on it, and what you take from it, there's an amount of theorization in what you take from it, but I tend to find it useful for understanding because there's a concrete element to it which helps people appreciate that what adolescents are going through is something real, and then also just the information is useful. So comparing adolescents to children with processing in the different regions of the brain. So there's some regions of the brain that are concerned with emotional processing and others that are more concerned with cognitive reasoning. Now, adolescents, they have abilities and skills for cognitive reasoning more advanced than children in many, many different ways. But at the same time, something that brain scans have shown is that the ratio or the balance of activity between the emotional centers in the brain and the cognitive reason centers of the brain between children and adolescents are not the same. And in adolescents, even though they have better cognitive reasoning abilities than children, they have more intense activity going on in the emotional centers, and the amount of activity that they have going on in the emotional centers, it's imbalanced compared to the ratio of activity in children and adults. So this means that adolescents are very emotionally intense, and they experience emotions very intensely, and they also project emotions onto others very intensely. And as an adult in their life, you have to take it as part of your responsibility to help them be emotionally balanced more. How do you do this? Well, there's different ways, and it's something I'll continue to talk about. But first thing is, it takes time. It takes time, and it takes consistent time with them. And a lot of times people, they ask about teenagers or they ask about dealing with young people. And, there's a tendency of people, they want quick answers to things. But consistent time with young people is one of the biggest things. Why? Well, this insecurity and this emotional intensity, a big thing that it does for adolescents is it creates a tendency within them to have very high defense mechanisms and to very impulsively put up defense mechanisms when dealing with people, especially people who are in roles of evaluating them, which parents and teachers always are. And when a productive relationship isn't nurtured, and when the adult doesn't have the skills themselves to have a relationship with those young people in a way that helps them be emotionally imbalanced, it's not uncommon at all that those defense mechanisms get so high that they result in emotional withdrawal from the relationship or hostility towards the relationship in the young person and oftentimes within the adult themselves. So just consistent time is one thing. Another key thing that parents and teachers really need to understand is adolescents are very sensitive to nonverbal cues, meaning things other than the words we say. Body language, tone of voice, and perhaps most especially facial expression. And this is another thing that has been pretty well confirmed in research of brain scanning, that adolescents are way more sensitive to facial expression than adults are. And that's something I'll talk about as I continue with this series.